Minister, I welcome this opportunity. I have 3 minutes and I just want to ask, why hasn't the interim report been published? If anything, and if we're going to learn anything, it's to show respect, and you talk about respect and dignity, and I appreciate your bona fides. However, you published last Friday without talking to any of the survivor organisations on the ground, and no explanation has been given as to why the interim report, which you have since last September, hasn't been published. And if we're going to create confidence, that's the first step. The second step, I want an assurance that the site in Tuam will be properly and forensically sealed off, and the full details given in relation to that. I want an assurance that the date for applications will now be extended, because quite clearly more survivors, more workers and more concerned people will come forward in view of the discoveries so far. And then we must look at expanding the terms of reference, and that can only be done when we see the contents of the interim report. So that's why it's essential that we see what has been learned so far, rather than have us ask questions what has been hid. It's not my style. But when an interim report is not published, then it begs the question, why not? In relation to Tuam itself, without a doubt, it cannot be seen in isolation. It's part of an overall system. And when we have a minister or a Taoiseach talking about no nuns broke into our home in the middle of the night, Taoiseach, I think, Minister, you might agree, it's missing the point that these homes were set up in total collusion with the state and government after government. And indeed, as far back as 1929, and I'm reluctantly quoting a man, but it's a very good quote, back in 1928, and Oliver St John Gogarty summed up the situation well in 1928 when he declared to the Senate, "It's high time that the people of this country find some other way of loving God than by hating women." Now, it seems to me that on a lot of levels we have continued in that vein of loving a God by demonising other people. And in this case, it's women. And we have a history of doing that. And the question of morality and fallen women and all of this terrible terminology was used to hide the pervasive poverty and used to hide the pervasive distinction and class distinction, because let's be very honest here, poor women were taken away. And while the nuns themselves didn't come in the middle of the night, and it's not my job to demonise nuns, the state were utterly complicit in what the nuns did. And if they didn't come in the middle of the night, certainly the system made it that these women did go. And separately from that, what's been ignored utterly is how many women were subject to rape and assault and ended up adding insult to insult. So, Minister, I take your bona fides. Let's see it in action. Let's take on the practical suggestions I've given you, and let's have the report published immediately.